quite often we get to the product delivered and then we stop the journey mapping process. But the experience only really gets started once the consumer has the product or service that they tried to procure from you.
Welcome to Experience Points, presented by our friends at Avtex, who transform customer experience through CX design and orchestration. On Experience Points, contestants earn points by answering customer experience questions and share their insight on how to make your interactions remarkable. Those points turn into dollars for the charity of their choosing. I'm Dan Gingiss.
And I'm Joey Coleman, and we'd love to introduce you to today's contestant. Jason Bradshaw is the customer experience expert from Down Under. He's the Chief Customer and Marketing Officer at Volkswagen Group Australia. He's a professional speaker and the author of the fantastic book, It's All About Sex. Well, that's spelled C-E-X, folks. It's All About Sex, the essential guide to customer and employee experience. And he actually started his own telecom and hardware distribution business at age 14. Jason, welcome to Experience Points.
Hey Joey, it's so great to be on Experience Points with you and Dan. I'm really looking forward to what we achieved today.
Well, we're super excited to have you and to have somebody from Down Under. In the podcast world, we call this vocal texture because we got some different voices here and it's going to sound fantastic. Jason, tell us one thing about you that you haven't shared with an audience before.
When I was 8 or 9 years of age, I sat on the back of a fire truck throwing bags of lollies at a crowd.
I love it.
Now, I don't think I've shared that with anyone on a podcast before, that's for sure.
That is brilliant, Jason. So the moral of the story is you've been a crowd pleaser when it comes to creating experiences from a very young age. Absolutely brilliant. Well, Jason, you're going to be playing for a special organization today. Can you tell us a little bit about who you'll be playing for and why that organization is special to you?
So today I'm playing for the Trevor Project, which works with the LGBTQ youth, people under 25 years of age, helping them with a whole range of mental health and youth topics, homelessness, and really making a difference for people at their most vulnerable stage in life.
Outstanding. That sounds like a fantastic cause. And let's get into the game and win some money for the Trevor Project. Today we're going to be playing What Happened.
In What Happened, listen to the first half of a real customer experience. Choose between two possible endings to complete the story. Answer correctly for 200 experience points. You will have the opportunity to earn an additional 50 points for each insight you share from your own experiences.
You ready to get started, Jason?
Absolutely, let's bring it on.
This is what happens when the suit doesn't fit. In preparing for his upcoming wedding, an excited groom wanted to get a made-to-measure suit for himself and for each of his groomsmen. He found an online service that, ironically enough, had a showroom in his state where on-site tailors would take the measurements and reduce the possibility of any mistakes. The groom and his groomsmen got in the car and drove over 3 hours each way to get to the showroom, and they had a great experience there, selecting the suit fabrics and getting measured. Now, several weeks later, when the suits arrived, they tried them on and discovered that one of the groomsmen's suits had sleeves that were 4 inches too short. The groom immediately reached out to the customer service team to tell them about this situation.
Okay, here's the first option for what happened. The customer service team said, no problem. We'll remake the suit and ship it by the end of the week. With 3 to 5 days shipping, it'll be there in plenty of time. By the end of the next week, when the new suit still hadn't arrived, the groom frantically followed up multiple times. He didn't hear back, and then suddenly the made-to-measure suit company sent an email to the groom that said, we're sorry, it's not going to ship until the day before your wedding. The groom replied to this email stating that this was a huge issue, and the company sent another email saying, yes, and we're sincerely sorry, but there isn't anything we can do about it.
Now here's option number 2 for what happened. The customer service team said, no problem, we'll remake the suit and ship it to you tomorrow. It'll arrive in 3 to 5 days and it'll be there in plenty of time. The following week, the new suit arrived, but now the sleeves were 6 inches too short. The groom spent 30 minutes on the company's website looking for a phone number, and when he finally found a number, he was able to call and leave a message. The next day, they called back and said, we're sorry for the mistake. We can have a suit ready for you the morning of your wedding, but you'll need to send someone here to pick it up. Early the morning of the wedding, the best man was at the suit tailor's place, ready to pick up the suit, but the suit wasn't ready. The tailor apologized for the inconvenience and gave the best man a 10% coupon for a future discount on a suit purchased on their online store. So Jason, you've heard 2 options for what happened. Which one do you think shares the way the story actually happened? Is it the we're sorry emails, or it's still not ready, but here's a 10% coupon?
Well, I think either is. You're asking me to choose the best of a worst bunch, that's for sure. I'm going to go with we're sorry emails.
Gotcha. And why are you selecting the we're sorry emails, Jason? Just out of curiosity.
Because I just want to have hope in humans in not getting to the wedding day going, it's not ready and I'll give you a 10% coupon. I think surely no one is going to actually be thinking that's the right thing to do on the day of the wedding.
Alrighty, so let's see what actually happened. Jason, you are correct. They sent the we're sorry emails, and that's all that happened, but it wasn't compounded by the 10% off coupon on the day of the wedding. Jason, when we listen to these stories, I mean, you mentioned, I hope that they have some humanity. Explain to us how they could have made this situation even better. What are some ideas or insights you have as to how this experience could have been improved, not only in this case, but hopefully going forward for other customers of theirs?
So I believe customers measure their experience across 3 separate pillars. The first is success, second is effort, and the third one is a human connection. Now, if we think about success in this one, well, that would have been getting all of the suits on time and correct. Now, they've failed there, but how would they recover? Well, I think there's a couple of ways that they could recover. The first is there a local tailor that they could have paid to make an alteration to the suit? Now, maybe there wasn't enough fabric, or maybe there was, but that could have been an immediate step that could have been implemented the very next day to get closer to success for the individual. Secondly, that answers the question around effort. You know, the whole waiting game, the sending of emails, none of that's great. How could they make it more convenient, more effortless to have this problem solved? So again, I go back to using a local tailor. The second option, of course, there would be, using FedEx to overnight it, not a 3 to 5 day shipping, to take away that worry and that delay. And then the third, around the human connection, I didn't see them apologize and in a meaningful way, number one. Number two, they didn't acknowledge that they're at fault and provide a very clear way to build trust again. So, we acknowledge that we got it wrong. We understand that this is a difficult time for you. And here are the 3 things that we're going to do to make it right so that you do have the wedding of your dreams, or at least the suit of your dream for the wedding. And that, for me, is where they've failed. They haven't followed a framework to actually give the customer any sense of certainty that it was going to happen. And I think if it was my organization, I would have been doing 2 things. First of all, I would have been remaking the suit and putting that on, the fastest possible shipping. I can't believe that 3 to 5 days was the fastest shipping. The second thing I would have been doing is, as I said, offering to pay for it to go to a local tailor if that was an option. Now, you might seem a bit weird that I'm going to remake and do the local tailoring, but I want that customer to know that we've got their back and that we're going to make this right. And the word of mouth that's going to be generated from they did not one but two things to get it right, that's going to outweigh any cost in remaking the suit and paying for some local tailoring. So that's where I would go. And then, of course, I would follow up before the wedding to make sure that everything had been received and was fitting perfectly.
Jason, fantastic answer, and I would much rather buy a suit from you than these guys, obviously, because I'd have a whole lot more confidence. I also think that one of the things here that was maybe missed was that this is a wedding, right? This is a once-in-a-lifetime, hopefully, once-in-a-lifetime event that can't be moved, can't be shifted. There really is we call it a hard deadline or a hard stop in the business world, right? It is what it is. And there is no do-over here. So you have to have it right the first time. And what I didn't see in any of the communication was any understanding about that it's not okay if this doesn't work out, because then I don't have a suit to wear for my wedding, or my groomsmen don't have a suit to wear, and there's no second chance in there. And to me, if you're going to be in a business where you are servicing customers pretty much all the time that are in that situation, you have to have, as you mentioned, the process in place to ensure, frankly, that those kinds of mistakes don't happen in the first place. And then if they do, that you have a methodology for responding and resolving as quickly as possible.
Dan, I totally agree with you. I mean, here's the thing. Jason outlines a beautiful framework, and it seems like in either of the two examples there was no framework for handling these issues. And I have to believe in a custom made-to-measure suit business, this is not the first time that the measurements were off. And frankly, even if it was the first time the measurements were ever off with a customer, that's something that the business should have envisioned as potentially going wrong. I think the smartest organizations in the world look at the ways the services they deliver could fail or could go wrong, and then they build in solutions before that happens so that they're ready. It's almost like a scenario modeling or a gaming to be able to anticipate that. Jason, could you speak a little to this idea of anticipating problems and building the solutions before you're kind of in the heat of the moment or the crisis where maybe people aren't thinking as logically or as clearly?
Well, a lot of CX professionals talk about journey mapping and understanding each of those critical touch points in a consumer's journey. I think, quite often we get to the product delivered and then we stop the journey mapping process. But the experience only really gets started once the consumer has the product or service that they tried to procure from you. So I think, for me, the organizations need to do two things. They need to continue journey mapping beyond the delivery of the product or service to understand, to your point, Joey, where are those opportunities to preempt or anticipate something might go wrong in that ownership experience in those early days. We talk about an employee makes their decision to stay with an organization within the first 90 days that they work for a company. I would argue in the first 5 days is the most critical part to that experience, if not the first 5 minutes within an organization. And it's the same with the customer. When they first receive their product, they're starting to form opinions around, did I make the right choice? And anything that we can do to make sure that we anticipate how to recover when they aren't feeling like they've made the right choice will go a long way to building that lifetime loyalty and positive word of mouth. The second thing to that process, though, is not just about sitting in a room and doing a what-if scenario, but if I take this example that we had here, what system is in place to routinely review what mistakes happened and then build in a systematic, repeatable recovery process? It's funny, while you were talking, it actually brought me back to my wedding, where my husband and I went to the same tailor to get our custom suits made for our wedding. Now, thankfully, we didn't have this exact same experience, but we had to go back 6 or 7 times before they had it right. Now, we were planning ahead because we travel so much, but and thankfully the suit hung in my wardrobe for 2 months before the wedding day, and it still fit on the actual wedding day itself. So that was good, even after spending some time at Disney. But I think that organizations, like if I think back to that experience that I had, I was doing all the work. I was saying to the supplier, this is the expectation I have for recovery. Here are the 3 things I want you to do for me, as opposed to them saying, well, we get it wrong sometimes, and here are the 3 things that we know we can do to make it right for you. And it comes about having not only that preemptive what could go wrong after someone takes delivery or comes for delivery, but also having a systematic review process so you can learn and adapt over time. Getting the length of something wrong in the clothing industry doesn't seem like something that would be too foreign to me, yet in my own lived experience, funny enough, they managed to do it, and it was a process that I had to lead. And I think the very first thing that any organization that's serving customers, and that's all of them, should do is look to lead the experience and deliver something that is of value, as opposed to putting the customer in charge of recovering their own problem. No, you created the problem. You need to lead the solution of it.
So true. And Jason, if I may take that even one step further, my wife has this great line, and I'll be candid, it's not referring to me where this line was created, but she will often say, it may not be your fault, but it's your problem. And I think all too often businesses look at, well, we didn't cause this issue. Now, in this example, certainly they did, but what if the suit just hadn't arrived because of delay with the shipping company or the mail? It's not the fault of the suit company, but it's still their problem to solve for the customer. And I totally agree with you. Lots of times businesses have a different understanding of what the finish line is than the customer. Anybody making clothes for a wedding has this belief that, oh, well, the finish line is when we deliver the clothes to the bride or the groom or whoever it is, or the groomsmen or the bridesmaids, and then we're good. No, friends. The finish line is when they wear those clothes at the wedding, and then they get the photos back from the wedding, and they looked fantastic in the photos. That's the line you should be going towards. And to your point about customer journey mapping, I think if we extend the path to those type of endpoints, we're able to create much more engaging and remarkable customer experiences.
Absolutely, and I think that we need to take it from a lens of what is the problem that we're solving. Joey, the problem isn't the person needs a suit. The person wants to look good on their wedding day. That's the problem that we're trying to solve. And once you start framing it that way, that end point, it shifts along that line to the photos arriving after the wedding, where everyone says, oh, didn't the couple just look amazing on their wedding day?
All right, Dan, I heard a lot of great insights there. Let's recap how Jason did playing What Happened.
All right, well, in this game, guessing correctly what happened earns you 200 points, and Jason did so. He knew what happened. He also had a number of great insights during our discussion, and those insights are worth 50 points each. When we add up Jason's great ideas, he earned an additional 300 points. When you add those two scores together and convert them to dollars, Jason earned a $500 donation to the Trevor Project.
This concludes this episode of Experience Points. Check out more games with Jason and other celebrity contestants at experiencepointsgame.com. That's experiencepointsgame.com. We'll see you soon for more examples of remarkable customer experiences here at Experience Points, presented by Avtex.
I think one of the things that really stuck out in my mind in this conversation is this idea of anticipating problems. And we do an awful lot of work with our clients around journey mapping, and we always look at kind of the normal journey. And I think this was really a good call out to say, well, what's the journey when something goes wrong, and how do we respond to that? There's a saying that goes, the true test of an organization is not when things are going right, it's when things don't go right, and how, and so how do they respond? So I think in many cases, when things are not necessarily going right or not perfect, how you respond does more to drive and build loyalty than it does when things are going right. Because that's the expectation. The expectation is, things should go right. But when things go wrong and you are able to respond in a way that is memorable, that is unanticipated, boy, does that solidify the customer's perception of you.
Well, I think that it's the expectation on the customer's behalf that it should go right, but it needs to be the opposite for the business. You can't model how you work on everything's going to go right? And to your point on the journey mapping, people are, you're not journey mapping for when things go wrong. And I think that that's a critical point that came out for me, is this concept of building models for employees to be able to operate within when things go wrong.